Hi guys, so today we're checking out the JLT Series 2 Cold Air Intake with the red oiled filter, fitting all 2011 and newer Chargers with the 5.7 liter HEMI. So if you are in search of a cold air intake that's going to increase your performance and efficiency for your motor and also be a great supporting mod to any other performance mods that you have on your Charger already, this option by JLT is going to be a great choice to take a look into, especially if you're looking for a cold air intake that has a solid build and a high quality construction. Now this is going to completely replace the factory intake system, getting rid of a lot of that restriction, increasing the airflow and optimizing filtration for better horsepower and torque numbers. You're also going to get some better throttle response with this and overall, again, better efficiency with your 5.7 liter HEMI. Now this again is going to have a high quality construction. We're going to have a large straight through style intake tube that's going to increase that airflow, get all of that cold air in to that intake manifold, getting that performance that you would want out of a cold air intake, and it's going to have a large oiled conical filter here. Now I do really like the fact that this is going to be reusable, perfect for someone out there who is looking to get an intake that's going to last the lifetime of their Charger while also being very easy to maintenance. Now you can just pop this out, clean it, re-oil it, and pop it right back in, again lasting the lifetime of your car. Now this is also going to be a lot different than some other options available when it comes to comparing this to other choices in the category as far as the filter construction is concerned. Now this is going to have large deep pleats. It's going to increase that surface area for filtration, but it's also not going to be capped at the top. I'll show you guys what I'm talking about in just a little bit, but that's going to increase airflow and again optimize filtration, which is going to be great, especially if you're looking for that. And this is going to bring a lot of performance to the table when it comes to a cold air intake. Now, nonetheless, this is also going to just be made of a roto-molded plastic. I'll tell you guys a little bit more about that. But in comparison to some other choices, this is not going to be made of or have any stainless or aluminum components that could potentially hold in any heat. So this is going to eliminate all of the heat soak or all of the hot engine bay air from getting it to that filter, which I particularly like. And of course, it's going to look very sleek mounted inside of the engine bay there. I do really like the fact that you have JLT stamped right on the top, and the plastic is going to have a factory style look. Again, just making it look very sleek in the engine bay. Now with all of that being said, this is going to come in at roughly $350, and I personally think that that's a great price point for what you're getting out of the kit. Now, in comparison to some other choices, again, some other less expensive choices or more affordable options are usually just going to have a stainless or even an aluminum intake tube and or heat shield, and then some other options available in the category may have an enclosed air box instead of a sealed off one like this. This just has the bottom portion and then seals to the hood. And not to mention, the other thing that makes this intake stand out is the fact that it is going to be CARB certified, so it's legal in all 50 states, and this is not going to require a retune or a tune at all in order to run this on your HEMI, which I personally like. Again, makes it stand out from some of the other options in the category. So overall, if you're looking for a high quality cold air that's going to give you the performance and the overall build that you're looking for, then this is going to be a great choice. And when it comes to install, it couldn't get any easier. I'm going to give this a 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter, taking you about 45 minutes to get the job done with some very basic hand tools. So speaking of the install, let's jump into that now. The tools that I used for my install were an impact wrench, an 8mm and 10mm socket, a flathead screwdriver, and a soft pry tool. So the first step of our install is to get our engine cover out of the way, and then we can go ahead and unplug our IAT sensor and our PCV line. So for the engine cover, all we have to do is just pop this up and move this out of the way. Then we can unplug the intake air temperature sensor. We're just going to press down and pull back. So I'm just going to use a soft pry tool just to get that seal undone. And that'll just help you wiggle it off the air box. All right. Next, we can take off the intake tube. We're going to have 2 clamps, one at the throttle body and one at the air box. I'm going to use an 8mm socket in my impact wrench to loosen up the clamps. You could also use a ratchet for this or even a flathead screwdriver if you don't have an 8mm socket. So once those are loosened up, what we could do is just give it a good pull back from the throttle body and from the airbox. Next, we can remove our airbox. It is held in by a bracket on the front here and a bolt. I'm going to use an 8mm socket to remove that bolt. So after that bolt is removed, there's a grommet that's holding in the bottom of our airbox. We just have to give it a good pull up, and then we'll be all set to go. So before we jump into install, I did want to stop down and tell you guys a little bit more about this new JLT Cold Air Intake, especially in comparison to our factory intake system, show you some of the similarities and differences between the two and why this is going to be a big upgrade for your charger. Now, starting off is just a brief overview of our factory system. We're gonna have a pretty standard setup here. So we're gonna have an enclosed air box to protect our filter. Filter is going to be a paper filter or paper element that you have to change every so 1,000 miles. It doesn't do the best job when it comes to high airflow performance, but it does do a pretty okay job at filtration, as it should. And then when moving over to the intake tube, that is going to be a pretty standard setup as well. Pretty decent size as far as airflow is concerned. Everything is going to be made out of a factory plastic material. Again, very standard setup, but not when it comes to performance and optimizing filtration like this JLT option is going to do for you. So starting off with the airbox with the JLT, this is just going to consist of a lower airbox compared to our factory one, which is going to be completely enclosed. Now this is going to have a seal up at the top that's going to seal to the hood. So even though it is a little bit more open, this is going to keep all of that hot engine bay air out because of that seal, and it's going to be made of a roto-molded plastic. So unlike some other options in the category that have a heat shield or lower airbox portion like this that are made out of an aluminum material or some type of metal material, this is not going to create any heat soak or get any hot air at all. This is going to eliminate all that hot air from getting to the filter that I personally really like. Not only that, but it's going to give you more of a factory look with being very sleek with this nice textured plastic material. Now when moving over to the filter, this is really where you're going to get all that performance and that airflow and filtration. Everything that you would want out of the cold air intake is really going to come down to the filter here. Now this is going to be a large oiled conical filter, and it is going to have a pretty cool design in comparison to not only the factory paper filter, but in comparison to some other options available in the category. Now starting off, again, this is going to be a large conical filter. You are going to have large 1-inch pleats, so this is going to create a lot of space for filtration and that airflow. With it being oiled, it is going to be reusable, so that sticky surface is going to do a really good job at capturing any of those micro contaminants, but you can take this out, you can clean it, you can re-oil it and pop it back in. So you can use this for the lifespan of the intake and the charger itself. Now what I do really like about this option in comparison to not only the factory one, but other options available in the category is that this is not capped off at the top. This is going to have a bell mouth design here. So if you take a look inside of the filter, you're going to have a mini filter in the top. So that's just going to increase the airflow, increase filtration, and overall get all of that cold air that you would want into the intake tube, into the throttle body, increasing your performance, your horsepower, torque, throttle response, and all of that good stuff that you would want out of a cold air intake. Now moving over to the intake tube, this is going to be a lot bigger than the factory one, increasing that airflow, increasing that performance, and it's going to be made of the same roto-molded plastic material that the airbox is made out of. So again, you're not getting any of that engine or hot engine bay air in. You're not getting any heat soak with this, unlike some other options in the category that may have a metal construction. This again is not going to cause any heat soak with that plastic material. So overall, this is going to be a great setup, a high quality setup, perfect for somebody who is looking for a high quality intake that's going to increase their performance. So what do you say we go ahead and install it on our charger? So before we can install our new system, we do have to swap over our IAT sensor. Now this is going to be on the elbow part of the intake tube. Now I'm just going to use a small flathead and get that little tab up and over this ridge. So once that little tab is over this ridge here, we can just twist and pull back. and then we'll be able to swap over into the new tube. Now you want to make sure that it's oriented the correct way. So if this was in here like that, I'm going to make sure that this little tab is at the front. So now this is just going to sit down on in the material of a grommet. So we can just give this a good push. If you need to, you can use that flathead screwdriver. Kind of carefully push it down on in. All right, now you want to make sure that it's sitting flush and that O-ring is sealed up. So once that's in there, we can put our factory intake tube aside. Now the only thing that we'll need to transfer over from our factory box is this grommet here. So I'm just going to use that same flathead screwdriver that we were using for the elbow for the intake tube. I'm just going to push that right off. This is just going to help secure the bottom of the air box, so then we can put our factory air box to the side. So now that we have our factory grommet, we can just push that on into place, and then we can head over to the charger. So in order to make room for our air box, I'm going to remove the two 10mm bolts that are holding in our coolant reservoir tank, so we can just move it back a little bit, get our air box in, and then we can resecure this down. So I'm using a 10mm socket. Just going to remove those two bolts. And this will just give us enough wiggle room to get this out of the way. Next, we can take our air box, lining up this front mount and lining up that grommet, and we can wiggle this down into place. All right, now while we're here, I'm just going to thread in that factory bolt up at the front. It's that 8mm bolt that we removed on the factory air box, just to keep that in place. And then we can put the two bolts for our coolant reservoir back into place. And tighten those back up with that 10mm socket. Don't over tighten them because that is plastic. I'm going to tighten up that front bolt real quick. Then we can tighten up this bolt up at the front using that 8mm socket that we used initially to take it out. Now we can set up our intake tube. So I am going to put our elbow here on our throttle body. I am also just going to flip the clamp so it's a little bit easier to access instead of having it underneath our throttle body sensor right there. We can do the same thing with the other clamp. Right, then we can grab the main portion of our intake tube, slide that into that elbow there, making sure that it's fully seated up against this lip. You also want to make sure that JLT is level, so we can give this a good turn. All right. Make sure that that clamp is sitting over. If you need to adjust the clamps, you can. Now once everything's pretty much seated how you want it, what I'm going to do is tighten these up. I'm going to use an 8mm socket for both clamps. So then what we can do, making sure that the clamp is oriented in a spot where we can reach it, we can install the filter carefully on the intake tube. All right, again, you want to make sure that it's seated up against that back lip. Then we can tighten up that clamp using an 8mm socket. What we can do now is take the supplied hose. I'm going to use the one with the larger fitting up top. We can place that over the fitting on the side of the intake tube. Now once that's on and seated, we can secure our factory PCV line that we took off earlier to our new fitting. Want to make sure that that's sitting flush with that bottom lip. Right, and this one's sitting flush with the back of the intake. Next we can plug in our IAT sensor. And then last but not least, we can pop on our engine cover. Just line it up. This may be a little bit tricky because of that new PVC line. Just kind of have to finagle it around that. We can give it a good press. So that is going to wrap it up for my review and install. Make sure you like and subscribe for more videos and products just like this, and always keep it right here at AmericanMuscle.com.